Right now on the National Weather Desk, return to the moon. A successful landing on the lunar surface ushers in the next chapter of space exploration.
This is quite an emotional feeling to be here.
Solar flares. Is there a connection to yesterday's widespread cellular outage?
Generally, it affects lower frequency, but it can affect all different frequencies.
Where's the snow? Syracuse is on track to set a snow record.
Well, so far this season, we are lacking in snow.
We're in Texas, where another small town is getting ready for the solar eclipse.
Bernie and Kendall County population is going to double that weekend, especially that day of Monday, April the 8th.
And the lake that unexpectedly appeared in the driest place in North America.
From our nation's capital, this is the National Weather Desk.
And good morning and welcome to the National Weather Desk. I'm meteorologist Matt Ritter. We are back on the moon. For the first time since 1972, a United States spacecraft is on the lunar surface. It was one small step for NASA before it takes a giant leap of returning astronauts to the moon. Jen Sullivan has details.
What we can confirm, without a doubt, is our equipment is on the surface of the moon.
An historic moment in lunar exploration, a U.S.-made spacecraft landing on the moon for the first time in more than 50 years.
Welcome to the moon.
I'm very excited about this.
Right there.
The last time the U.S. landed on the moon was the Apollo 17 mission in 1972.
This is quite an emotional feeling to be here.
That's the CEO of Intuitive Machines, talking before the launch. He's the head of the company that created this robotic explorer, named Odysseus. It's the first time a private company has landed a craft on the moon.
This is a small little company trying to do something that is very bold.
Odysseus is about the size of a phone booth. No crew members were on board. It landed Thursday night on the moon's south pole. None of the Apollo missions have landed in that area. The reason behind this was to explore that part of the moon and see if there's water in the form of ice before NASA sends a crewed mission there in late 2026. NASA paid the company $118 million for this mission. This will have a major impact on future exploration.
We've been going to the moon for a while, and we need to continue to.
The spacecraft left Earth February 14th. Traveling roughly 620,000 miles to get to the moon. Other private companies have attempted to complete this mission, but none of them landed on the moon until Thursday night, making this a giant leap for further moon exploration. I'm Jen Sullivan reporting.
And coming up in about 10 minutes, we'll go one-on-one with NASA to discuss what they hope to accomplish with this mission. Well, yesterday's cell phone outage impacted millions of people across the country. For many hours, people were suggesting that solar flares were responsible. Meteorologist Joe DiCarlo spoke with an expert about why that's most likely not the case.
We had basically very intense explosions at the sun. And these are basically immense bursts of radiation that shoot into space. And Earth was in the way.
Meyer Daya is the manager of the heliophysics section at Southwest Research Institute. He notes that the sun had 3 large solar flares Wednesday night and early Thursday morning. This was from an active region in the sun.
There's lots of activity happening on there. We already saw two X-class flares and 1 M-class flares, and this is something really big.
Big, but not uncommon. He notes that these flares have always happened, but we notice them more as we become so reliant on technology. However, the particular outages happening Thursday are unlikely to be related to the solar flare activity.
They are unlikely to be the causes of the outages, just simply because of the timing. It would have been nighttime, so we were pointing in the wrong direction. We were pointing away from the sun.
Angela Speck is chair of the Department of Physics and Astronomy at UTSA. She notes that the main solar flare disruption affects your ability to listen to your radio, especially those left on your dial.
It generally affects lower frequency, but it can affect all different frequencies.
And we may not be done with these solar flares.
For this to produce these 3, and clearly it's still very active, we may still see more. So we will see in the coming days.
An estimated 2.5 million Americans were forced out of their homes last year by weather-related disasters. That's according to brand new data just released by the Census Bureau. There were 28 disasters in the United States last year that each cost at least $1 billion. Hurricanes, floods, and fires are the most common disasters forcing people to move. Florida, Texas, and California and Louisiana had the most numbers of people displaced. Other evacuations happened in Maine, where storms pounded the state last year. They continued into January, especially along the coast, and some towns are still assessing the damage. Aisha Reed visited a town in southern Maine that's still trying to figure out the cost to fix it all.
Those two storms from January hit Kittery hard. So hard the town is still trying to clean up. York County Emergency Management Director Art Cleaves summed it up.
This was the worst high tides that we've seen ever in history. So very significant damages.
Several $1 million worth, specifically to waterfront areas like Fort Foster Park.
Probably one of the most significant areas that was impacted was Fort Foster Wharf. That damages are probably going to exceed $500,000.
Pepperell Cove was also hit hard. The riprap here, which is loose stone used to create a foundation, was significantly hit. Cleave says the total cost is around $200,000. Governor Janet Mills says her office is working endlessly to help hard-hit Maine communities.
We've been doing assessments throughout the county of York, probably throughout York County. There's been over $20 million worth of damage.
Though the price tag and damage might not end at just $20 million.
We're finding more damage in more locations.
Syracuse, New York is often ranked as the snowiest city in the country, but that's hardly been the case this year. Syracuse is on pace to have the least amount of snow in recorded history. Meteorologist Violet Schuyber breaks down the numbers.
Well, so far this season, we are lacking in snow. Up to this date, our total right now sits at 34.5 inches. In a normal season up to this date, we should be closer to 97 inches, so we are well below average. The least amount of snow we've seen up to this date back in the past is 37.5 inches. That means right now we're in first place for the least amount of snow, at least up until this date. Now looking at a full season. On average here in Syracuse, we usually get around 127 inches. The least amount of snow we've seen in a full season was 50.6 inches. That would mean that we would need to get an additional 16 inches or less to hold first place for the least snowiest season. Now let's look at winter overall. Winter begins December 21st and goes through March 19th. From the beginning of winter, December 21st, up to this date, we've had 24.7 inches. Normally, in an entire winter, we get around 91.2 inches. The least amount of snow we've seen during winter, 31.8 inches. So we would need to get an additional 7 inches or less to be in first place for the least snowiest winter.
Well, the driest place in the country is now home to a mysterious lake, and it's lasted much longer than expected. The lake appeared at Death Valley National Park after Hurricane Hillary drenched the area last August, and it's still there. And people are coming from all over to see it, even walking and boating in the water. At its peak, it was about 6 miles long and 3 miles wide.
Normally, there's a lot more evaporative potential than there is rainfall coming in, meaning that this is usually just a dry salt flat.
It's hard to overstate just how incredibly special and serene it is to kayak in Death Valley.
And several recent storms helped keep the lake full, but no one knows how long it'll take for the sun to evaporate all the water. Now let's check to see the weather in cities across the country today. We start in Missouri at Lake of the Ozarks. It's shaping up to be a great February day. Skies will be mostly sunny with a high of 61. Next up, Washington, D.C., along the Potomac River. Here you can see the Washington Monument on the left and the Jefferson Memorial on right. Morning showers will give way to mostly cloudy skies and highs in the 50s. Next is a look at Smith Mountain Lake in southwestern Virginia. It will not be a great day to be out on the water. It'll be cloudy with light rain. The high should reach 60 degrees. And finally, check out Lake Travis in Austin, Texas. They're looking at sunny skies and highs in the mid-70s. Should be in the mid-80s there by Monday. And coming up on the National Weather Desk, we continue our coverage of the upcoming solar eclipse. And we head to Texas, where one town is expecting their population to double in the days before the event.
I'm meteorologist Charlie Lopresti with a look at the Northeast. Most areas in the Northeast are dealing with a little bit of rain and snow early this morning. We're seeing a clearing trend during the course of the late morning and afternoon back into New York, and that will work its way through New England during the afternoon. We should top out near 40 degrees. Saturday, the big shift will be colder air moving in. We'll enjoy a lot of sunshine on Saturday. That's 1:30 in the afternoon. Temperatures will be in the 20s and low 30s, but wind chills will be in the teens and low 20s.
I'm Chief Meteorologist Gerard Jabali. Here's a look at the Mid-Atlantic region. Friday morning may only start out with just a few showers along the immediate coastlines. I don't think we're going to have a whole lot more moisture than that, but we will actually dry out and likely brighten up a bit for your Friday afternoon. And then we are looking mostly dry pretty much for the rest of the weekend. Temperatures will warm up for Friday afternoon, upper 50s on the table. But as we move into Saturday, it's going to be a lot chillier as some colder air moves in, upper 30s for highs.
I'm meteorologist Vitas Reed. Here's a look at your southeast forecast. Highs for the day, looking at 62 degrees in Raleigh, 67 in Charleston, 69 in Macon, 68 Birmingham, 74 in Mobile, about 76 Tampa, 80 in West Palm. It looks like we are seeing a frontal boundary, an area of low pressure moving across parts of the Carolinas. That will continue to push east. Behind it, we'll get some clearing. High pressure will be building in. South Florida is going to continue to see some showers through the overnight. Then we'll start to clear up as we get into the weekend.
Weather Window, presented by the National Weather Desk.
Here's a look at Utah's Wasatch Back Mountains. But this snow, part of an avalanche that was discovered Wednesday on Mount Shasta, thought to have happened on President's Day during a strong 4-day-long winter storm. The Mount Shasta Avalanche Center says it likely started around 10,500 feet and slid to about 7,200, with walls up to 60 feet deep. The amount of snow is described as mind-boggling.
As we reported earlier, for the first time in more than 50 years, an American-built spacecraft successfully landed on the moon yesterday. It's nicknamed Odie and is a little bigger than an old-fashioned phone booth. Should have called it a TARDIS. Emily Gracie spoke to a NASA expert to learn more about this mission and to find out what comes next. We should note this interview took place before yesterday's successful landing.
So this is part of NASA's actually a new way of going to the moon. We haven't landed on the moon in 50 years. This time we're relying upon commercial companies to deliver our science instruments to the moon. So a company called Intuitive Machines launched last week. They've made it all the way to the lunar orbit. Later this afternoon, they will attempt to land on the moon, the first time a commercial entity's ever landed on the moon.
What's in this special package of stuff that's being delivered to the moon?
NASA is planning and preparing under our Artemis program for future human landings on the moon. In these early missions, starting with the one we hope to land this afternoon, we'll be sending science instruments to the moon and technology demonstrations that help us prepare for the future human missions. For example, we have a radiation sensor on this mission that tells us more about the radiation environment at the South Pole of the moon.
Can you tell me why the South Pole, why this location, and how far it is from where we've been before?
It's quite a ways. All the Apollo missions landed in the mid-latitudes or near the equator. When you take humans somewhere, one of the things they need is water. The only places on the moon we're likely to find water might be at the poles. The moon there's no atmosphere, it's blasted by the sun. But there is some evidence that at the poles, areas where we don't get full sunlight all the time, there might be some water buried in the soil.
What has been the process, and then what's the process to get down to the surface of the moon?
They launched last week. They've been going through the process of getting themselves to the moon. It took them about 6 days. They fired their engines multiple times. This was the first spacecraft that fired fuel called LOX methane, liquid oxygen and methane. Later this afternoon, they will fire those engines again to slow them down. As you slow down, You start getting down towards the surface, and then eventually they will land on the rocket plume, just like we saw the Apollo missions land. Space business is hard. Nobody's ever landed successfully a robotic mission the first time they tried. If Intuitive Machines is able to pull out off this after, they'll be the first one that's done that. And they're doing it at a fraction of the cost of the governments that spent money to get there. So we're optimistic. We're really impressed with their technical skills, but this is hard to do.
And we are now just 45 days from the total solar eclipse across America. The state of Texas is expecting thousands of visitors. 100% totality will be visible in a large swath of the Lone Star State, including many small towns. Meteorologist Joe DiCarlo looks at how they're getting prepared.
There's a very small area that's in the path of totality for both, and Bernie is really in the center of both of them.
Chris Shadrock is communications director for the city of Bernie. He tells us that the city is ready for the upcoming total solar eclipse.
Bernie and Kendall County population is going to double that weekend, especially that day of Monday, April the 8th. So we're going to go from a community of about 22,000 to potentially 40,000 people here.
And that increased volume of people means business for its popular Main Street that is lined with small mom and pop businesses.
It defines our town in such a strong way. We're known as sort of like a Hallmark Christmas town.
A boost in business is always welcome, right? So it means a lot to everybody.
And businesses are preparing.
We're all just trying to cross all of our T's and dot our I's and make sure we have enough packaging, enough food, enough beer, enough everything.
And if you're questioning coming out to Bernie, just know.
Bernie is like a slice of small town Americana. I mean, you get to walk up and down the Main Street in this beautiful old historic mile here. Super friendly people. There's a nice little river that runs through here, some little creek. It's just a nice way to get away from the city and escape and go relax.
And stay with the National Weather Desk as we count down the days until the April 8th eclipse. We'll also have much more on the eclipse posted on our YouTube channel. Well, meteorological spring starts 1 week from today, and many folks across the country, for many folks across the country, temperatures this winter were relatively high. Meteorologist Ryan Mirando has a closer look at the numbers.
Climatological winter ends on February 29th this year, and it's leaving behind some record-breaking warmth. Anywhere that you see a red dot here is having at least its top 3 warmest winters on record. That's really been the trend over the past several years, as shown by Climate Central. Not only the warmth, but also less snow from 1970 to 2023. 64% of the stations they analyzed have had less snow, but also on the flip side, about 36% of their stations had more snow. So the trend over these winters looks like it'll be less widespread snow, but more localized heavy thumps of snow. And it's all really to do with, quote unquote, that warm air can hold more water. For every about 1 degree of warming, you get 4% increase in more water vapor. So areas that it can actually be cold enough to snow, when you get that extra water vapor, it can really dump a lot of snow in a short amount of time. However, just not many areas are reaching that freezing mark, so it's either all rain or a transition over to rain. But even with more water vapor in the air, heavier flooding rains could still fall.
And while many people enjoy those warmer temperatures, it can be a problem for allergy sufferers. Pollen season is already underway in parts of the South, and with warmer winters overall, that pollen season is starting earlier and earlier. Meteorologist Dante Ritchie has more.
Let's look into my backyard. You can see that there are several things that are sources or producers of pollen in addition to flowering plants. The grass. Certain kinds of grass start to grow earlier into the spring season, as well as ragweed and even mold spores. Pollen can come into your home if you don't keep things clean. It's always a good idea to also keep the air well circulated. But what's the real big source of pollen? The big problem happens to be the trees outside. The trees, some of them have already started to show the leaves. Others have to wait for some even warmer weather. And that can be slowed down by these cold spells of air out of Canada, leading to frosty conditions outside, delaying the start of spring. That also provides some allergy relief to us. But let's be real, there's more sunny and warm days ahead of us here as we head closer into the month of March. Eventually, the buds will burst, and those trees will produce those leaves as well as release the pollen. And when that wind starts to blow very strong outside, that causes the pollen to spread and leads to a lot of sneezing and allergies there as well. At this point in time, the strongest allergy levels, where the highest pollen counts are in the southern part of the country. But if we get some warmer weather here, even up into the northern parts of the country, that could allow these brighter colors and higher pollen counts to make their way northward as well, even into the month month of March. So warm weather may be welcome, but it probably will not be good for your allergy symptoms into the next few weeks.
If you want to see more content like this, be sure to check us out on social media. You can also find us on all your social media platforms. Just search the National Weather Desk. Time now for a short break, but before we go, let's take in views of Lake Powell.
Well, a very good Friday morning, everyone. I'm meteorologist Andrew Buckmichael. Take a look at what we've got across the Midwest. We got a quick clipper that's giving us a little bit of light snow showers trying to race its way into the Great Lakes area, and that will continue down into Indiana and Ohio and a little bit Kentucky for the day tomorrow. But look at all the sunshine we've got across the plains. It's going to be a little colder. I mean, only 38 for the high in Milwaukee tomorrow. As we continue on into your Sunday, quiet weather across the entire Midwest here with temperatures warming up a little bit more.
Good Friday morning to you, meteorologist Chris Suchan. Look at our forecast today across the region, and a lot of sunshine with a north breeze, low humidity, a delightful day. Highs will be in the 60s and 70s all across the region. Saturday starts off cool, crisp, 40s, 50s, maybe even 30s up in Amarillo. Afternoon is 60s and 70s for high temperatures with low humidity. 6 to 10 day outlook, above normal temperatures to near normal in South Texas. And there you can see our rainfall outlook over the next 6 to 10 days.
Well, hi there, everybody, and a good Friday morning. I'm meteorologist Shannon O'Donnell. Out west, it's quieter today. The Pacific Northwest has been feeling like spring, and that will be the case for one more day. Back into the low 50s in the Emerald and the upper 50s in the Rose City. Meanwhile, talking about spring, Phoenix at 81 in the Valley of the Sun, 37 today in Jackson Hole. High pressure still in charge over the west before a system drops down from Alaska as we head into this weekend. And that's the scene from here.
You are watching the National Weather Desk.
NASCAR heads to Georgia this weekend. This is a look at the Atlanta Motor Speedway this morning. It will host car and truck racing tomorrow and Sunday. Rain fell this morning, but what about on race day? Meteorologist Brandon Lawson has a look at the forecast.
Here's a look at the forecast here. Starting on your Friday, we've got scattered showers and thunderstorms in the mix. So yes, there could be a hit or miss shower or storm that gets the track today. So if you're headed to Truck Series qualifying or practice or any of the short track festivities they'll be having in the tri-oval later this evening, could be some delays there, but I do think they'll get some racing in today. Saturday and Sunday, much better forecast. Plenty of sunshine. It'll mix in with some clouds through the day. We'll be in the 50s on Saturday for the Xfinity race and the truck race. Truck race is also on Saturday. 100% chance of racing then. 100% chance of racing on Sunday as well for Atlanta, the Cup Series race. 60s for Sunday. Perfect forecast, especially in Atlanta when it can get really hot for this race. I'm meteorologist Brandon Lawson.
And if you're not going to the races this weekend or looking for something else to do, check out our podcast, Off the Radar. You can find it anywhere you get your podcasts. We'll be right back. Thank you for joining us this morning. I'm meteorologist Matt Ritter. Happy Friday. Have a wonderful, safe weekend. We'll see you right back here on Monday.